Well, to talk more on these developments in our TIA Health medical segment, we are joined by Dr. Abhishek Raut, Medical Director at Appletree Medical Group. Always great having you on the show, Dr. Raut.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, what can we take away from the findings of this UK study into cancer patients?
I think the most important takeaway point here is that certain groups, those with blood cancer or solid cancer, don't really respond the same way as those without these conditions. We know for cancer treatments can have significant effects on the immune system as a whole, and patients with these comorbidities would not necessarily be able to mount a strong resistance against COVID-19 without getting both shots in a relatively faster amount of time.
And do we know why the immune response of cancer patients is so different compared to those without any cancer?
There's two real points here. Cancer cells really develop from our own cells. So our immune system sometimes has a hard time finding out which cells are the cancer cells and which cells are our own cells and don't necessarily attack them. Oftentimes the immune system won't even notice the cancer cells there. And so cancer cells can also have the ability to turn off certain aspects of our immune system. The second is actually the treatments, the chemotherapy, the radiation therapy can affect bone marrow. And that's where our immune system is created. So once those are affected, the immune system's ability to really fight infections or mount an immune response with the vaccine significantly drops.
So how does this research speak towards the vaccine's effect on people with other pre-existing conditions?
I think this is a great point here. While the study we're describing really focused on cancer patients, the truth is we have many other patients who would have a similar drop in immune systems. These are the same patients who likely would get hospitalized more often for COVID-19. According to COVIDNet, which is CDC's hospital survey network, the most common comorbid conditions that affect hospitalization with COVID-19 are asthma, cardiovascular disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, diabetes, hypertension, and obesity.
Now, to add to all of this, we have Dr. Mona Nima, Canada's top scientist, advising against delaying the second dose of vaccines for seniors and those with pre-existing conditions. Why is she advising against this move? And she also mentioned seniors as well. Why this demographic as well?
That's right. So remember, Dr. Nimir is Canada's chief science advisor. So she's looked extensively through the clinical trials of the vaccines and the efficacy data. And what she said is she's actually not aware of any data that specifically shows efficacy beyond the first 2 months of the first dose. And we are now starting to see some data that shows that those who are elderly, those who are immune compromised, actually don't have much of an immune response after 2 months with one dose. So based on this data and the data we're getting out of our cancer patients here, it does make sense to look at vaccinating to completion very high risk and immunocompromised groups.
Now, on top of this, we know that vaccine manufacturer Pfizer has also spoken out against delaying the second dose past the 21-day interval. How should Canadians react to all of this contradicting information here?
I think that's difficult for sure. We know that Health Canada initially advised 21 days for Pfizer, 28 days for Moderna, and AstraZeneca, it said 12 weeks. NACI came to the decision to extend the intervals after looking at the real world effectiveness. And given that there were significant vaccine supply shortages at the time, it does make sense for NACI to have pushed all vaccines to 12 weeks to immunize as many as possible. Otherwise, we would have a situation where you have 1% of the population completely vaccinated and the others just waiting.
All right, sir, about 30 seconds left. But how can we improve our current vaccination plan to ensure the vulnerable people in the population get the vaccines protection that they deserve?
Fair enough. So the first real step here is we have to recognize all of this is stemming from one issue, which is vaccine supply. If we had enough vaccines, none of our agencies would be even debating extending. So the priority number one is really to ensure enough vaccine supply for all Canadians who can get their doses in a timely manner. And then second, what the studies are telling us is there's no one-size-fits-all approach to vaccination. We need to look at the high-risk groups and the groups with the weaker immune systems and prioritize them first.